I love the pieces from Pottery Barn. Their prices, not as much. But hey, that's where the DIY dupe comes in.
Okay, for our first Pottery Barn dupe, we're going to start with this pampas? I don't know how to say this. Flower art that they're wanting close to $300 for, and I knew I could make it for like $1. For this first DIY, you're just going to need a long frame. I just used one that I actually had kicking around the house. Mine had a few holes in it, so I had to fill it with a little bit of wood filler, and then I applied a couple of coats of the folk art chalk paint in oatmeal. It's probably a good idea to test the amount of room you're going to need for your pampas flowers. It's such a funny word. So I just arranged them first to make sure they would fit properly into the frame before I went ahead with the hot glue. That way I knew exactly where everything was going to go. Now, this step is completely optional, but I think that it just finishes off the whole look and makes it look high end. So just a little bit neater. So using your hot glue gun and some twine, thin twine from Dollar Tree, wrap the twine around the stems of the pampas flower, securing it with hot glue as you go. And when you're working at the, if yours also has sort of like split stems, work down from each side and then hot glue it to the center, and then hot glue a little bit of the twine around the main part of the stem. Once you've started from, I would start from the top. That's what I'm trying to say. I would start from the top. And then, yeah, just wrap and wrap and wrap until you've got that whole twine covered. Next, you're going to want to figure out your placement for your, is it a flower stem? Is it flower stem? What is it? We don't have that here. If you know what that, like a pampas, I think it's called, flowers, leave it in the comments below. But mine had, as you saw before, holes in the back of the picture frame. So I needed to cover those holes up. So I twisted the stem a bit, bent it a bit so that it would fit to cover that hole. And then I added an additional piece, little tiny piece in between. It just made the whole thing look fuller, and it also covered one of those holes that I to disguise. Yeah, and then just using your hot glue gun, glue down the bloom parts. Is it a bloom part? I really don't know. And press it down, and then put your backing back into the frame. Really, can use any old frame, and there you go. Tell me, do you think I did a good job? Does it look like the original? We desperately needed a floor mat, and I loved this one from Pottery Barn. I did not love its $100 price tag. I knew that a trip to IKEA and some spray paint, I could make this for a whole lot less. For this next DIY Pottery Barn dupe, you're gonna want to use a mat. I got mine from IKEA, and some painter's tape. Using a measuring tape, find the center of your mat, and then lay a strip of tape, painter's tape, across that. Then take a smaller piece of painter's tape to mark off exactly one tape space away, and then add your second piece of tape. This is going to give you the parts of the mat that when you paint it, you're going to still be able to see the original color of the mat through. And any of the spaces where you lay the little piece of tape and it's open, that's where the black paint is going to go. And then again, just using a piece of tape, double check that a few pieces of tape, double check that you've spaced things correctly so that you don't end up with, a line that starts kind of thicker in one end and ends up thinner on the other side, which I am notorious for. You're going to want to repeat that 3 times, and then you're going to take 2 pieces of the painter's tape to separate the next spaces on each end of the mat, and then again laying that painter's tape across. Also, little tip, forgot to mention, make sure you wrap the tape around the edges as well. You want it to go underneath the mat. Then I headed out to the garage because that's definitely the best place for me to spray paint, and just quickly press down that painter's tape again really well before whipping out that can of spray paint and giving it a couple of coats. Now, I got a little cocky here and thought I could spray paint a straight line even though I know better. Don't know what I was thinking. I think I was just excited to get this project going. So you can see here that I'm quickly realized that I skipped a step, and I grabbed some paper bags I had hanging around and covered up each end of the mat so that none of the paint gets on it. You'll see a little bit did, but it actually isn't that bad. And then make sure you get the ends of the mat, because that's just going to give it that, high-end finishing touch that makes it look like you didn't DIY it. And there you go. Tell me, what do you think? Did I do a good job? Does it look like the original? I simply fell in love with these candle holders, but for $50 for a small one and $130 for a large, there was just no way I was going to pay that. When I saw these in the Pottery Barn catalog, I knew immediately what I needed from the thrift store to make them. So a quick trip to the thrift store was all that it took to find 3 of these gorgeous casserole-shaped dishes. Then using some chalk paint, folk art chalk paint, and oatmeal, I mixed that in with some baking soda to make a thick paste. You're basically going for the look of soft served ice cream when it's slightly melted. And then once you've reached that consistency, taking a stippling brush, I find that adds the best texture with when you're doing a really textured baking soda paint, and just stippling that baking soda paint onto your casserole dish. Now I did 2 different color paints. I actually did oatmeal and then I did another one in milk jug paint. They both turned out really nice. So it really, the color you choose depends on you. I've seen these done in black, in terracotta, in more an oatmeal greeny color. Whichever color is going to suit your decor, that's the color you should do. Now for the larger casserole dishes, I just went in with a bigger, this is actually one of my chalk paint brushes. And then although I don't have a video of it, my bad, I did go in later with a chippy brush just to add a bit more texture, because that thick brush didn't really provide the kind of texture that the stippling brush would give. Now here's a little tip. If you need to leave your paint overnight to let your piece dry, just stick it in a Ziploc bag, but don't leave the paintbrushes in like I did. It's not a good idea. I shouldn't have been so lazy. And then the next day, use that paint that you left in the Ziploc bag to apply any needed second coat. It really shouldn't need a full second coat if you put it on really thickly the first time. It should just need a little bit of touch-ups in places, especially paying attention to, the rims and the edges of the casserole dishes, just filling any spots where maybe you see some color. And then there you go. Tell me how you think they turned out. Do you think that they look like the ones from Pottery Barn? I don't know about you, but I'm super happy with them. I'm a sucker for succulents, but I'm not a sucker for high prices. I knew I could make this for less than $20. Dollarama has these tic-tac-toe games, very inexpensive. You just need a square box that you can find at almost any craft stores or dollar stores that have little squares in the middle. And then just take some of your antiquing wax. I just used the Art Minds antiquing wax and put on a nice coat. It really only takes one, and it depends on how dark you want the color, or you could even leave it in it's an original wood color. I don't know about you, but I am a total sucker for succulents, and Dollar Tree has ones that look so realistic, and for $1.25 you cannot go wrong. I also had a few in my craft stash, so I took those out. Now I bend the wire over here in the picture, in the video. Don't do that. The more of a stem you have, the easier it is to put it into the floral foam that you've hot glued into those wooden squares. Did I mention hot glue foam into wooden squares? Hot glue foam into wooden squares, into each of the wooden squares. And that way you'll have somewhere to adhere your succulents to with just a little bit of hot glue and the stem. Et voila! I don't know about you, but I think that this actually might look a little bit better than the Pottery Barn one. And for $25 tops. I love it, but I don't know. What do you think? Okay, we're gonna make this almost $500 piece of art for like less than $5. Not exactly sure what it was about this DIY that I loved so much, but I knew I needed to have it in my life. And I think it can go like modern, country, boho. It's very versatile. So I just started off with Dollarama has these inexpensive wooden canvases for like $3 each, and I bought one of those, and then I just simply painted it with about 2, maybe 3 coats of white acrylic paint. I didn't bother with the chalk paint because I'm not planning on distressing it, so I didn't see the point in using the chalk paint. It costs a little bit more, and you can get the acrylic paint for like next to nothing at the dollar store. So that's the way I would suggest you go, but it's completely up to you. Ignore the twine and the yarn. I had an idea originally and then realized it was going to be a waste of time. So they look pretty, but you don't need them. What you are going to need though is wire clippers and just some varied greenery from the Dollar Tree. Go for things that are really textured, ferny type greenery, anything, with lots of interest and texture and that isn't too large, and then just snip them down so that you get little individual pieces like I do here. Okay, these little flower clusters, I have no idea what they're supposed to be. I am an avid gardener and I have never seen a flower that looks like this, but you can get them at Dollar Tree. They're basically little tiny foam balls all glued together into clusters painted pink, and they are perfect for this DIY. So you just need to pick up, a stem of those and then just clip off any of the little foam clusters. Okay, this is where we skip the twine and go with the hot glue gun instead. It suddenly occurred to me, keep it simple. So using your glue gun, just make long and short lines up and down to represent the stems of the flowers. Now these are not supposed to be perfect, so have fun with it, get creative, but try and keep it neat and try to keep at least some spatial awareness so that you don't have everything sort of on top of each other, because it will just look messy in the end. Okay, now is when we get to have a little bit of fun. So grab your hot glue gun and get some glue sticks in there, and then start arranging the greenery where you would like it. So mixing the textures, mixing the sizes and the look of the leaves. I found that the foam cluster balls look the best at the top, representing sort of the head of the flower, but just, have fun with it. Figure out what you like and how much you want added to it, how little you want added to it. Get creative. To get rid of any pesky little hot glue strings, just use a damp cloth and wipe them away. I also went in a little bit with tweezers. That's up to you. Depends on how picky you want to get. Once you've cleaned up your canvas and you have it the way you want it, go back in with some more of that acrylic paint. I recommend using a foam brush because it'll just get into all those nooks and crannies. And remember, we went with a lot of texture with our greenery, so there's going to be a lot of nooks and crannies to cover up. But try not to apply the paint too thickly because you don't want to cover up that texture and the detailing on the greenery. So it's best to go in with thinner coat, let it dry, and then go back in and if needed, touch up with another thin coat. And that's it for this super simple DIY. So tell me, what do you think? I would never have paid the price they were asking for it, but I love the way this turned out.
Well, that's it for today's DIY Pottery Barn Dupe. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and give me a thumbs up. And I'll see you next time. Until then, keep smiling and DIYing.